Goodyear Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We're excited to have you be a part of this important public process. Tonight, you will have the opportunity to address the commission on both non-agenda and agenda items. The agendas and speaker request cards are located on the counter in the lobby outside of the council chambers. You must fill out a speaker request card in order to address the commission. Please hand in your completed card to a city staff member. You may check the "I do not wish to speak" option on the card. This allows you to still voice your opinion on an item on the record without having to speak. In accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, please contact a staff member if you need any assistance. Public comment on a non-agenda item will take place during the citizen comment portion of the evening. These are items that don't appear on tonight's formal agenda. The commission secretary will call your name when it's time for you to speak. At that time, please approach the podium and tell us your name for the record. You'll have a maximum of 3 minutes. The timer is on the screens visible from the podium. Note that you may also choose not to speak if other speakers before you have said what you wanted to say. Shouting, cheering, and loud noises will not be tolerated, and violators may be removed for disrupting the meeting. Goodyear Planning and Zoning Commission meetings stream live on YouTube and online at goodyearaz.gov. Follow the city's social media pages so you don't miss out on all that's happening in Goodyear. Thank you for coming to this meeting and being an active part of your city. And remember, it's a great time to be in Goodyear.
Good evening. Planning and Zoning Commission meeting Wednesday, January 11th, 2023 is now called to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the secretary please note the roll?
Commissioner Sambito is present, Commissioner Booth is present, Commissioner Hegedus is present, Commissioner Wang is present, Vice Chairman Clymer is present, Chairman Kish is present, Commissioner Hamilton is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, a vote shall be taken to excuse the members unable to attend due to extenuating circumstances. May I please have a motion and a second to excuse Commissioner Hamilton? I have a motion by Commissioner Hegedus and a second by Commissioner Booth. Please enter your vote.
Motion passes.
Minutes. Item number 1 is to approve the draft minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on November 30th, 2022. Can I have a motion and a second? I have a motion by Vice Chairman Clymer and a second by Commissioner Hegedus. Please vote.
Motion passes.
Now is the time for citizens who would like to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on any non-agenda item. Are there any speaker cards? All right. Does anyone in the audience like to address a non-agenda item? Seeing none, I will move on. This is an opportunity for the commission members to disclose any ex parte communications that may have had prior to this meeting on any item scheduled for discussion on this agenda. Have there been any ex parte communications? None. Thank you. Before we begin with the meeting, Katie Wilkin, Deputy Director of Planning, has some information to share regarding City Council meetings.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to announce while we had all the interested parties in the room that the meeting time for City Council meetings has changed. They will now begin at 5 p.m., so please make sure you're aware of that time change. The next meeting, January 23rd, will also be held in this room and will begin at 5 p.m. The Planning and Zoning Commission meetings will remain at 6 p.m. Going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Agenda item number 2 is the Goodyear Celebration Plaza rezone, and I will open the public hearing. Alex Listinsky will present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, commission members. My first item, or my one item for you tonight, is called the Goodyear Celebration Plaza rezone. The subject property is approximately 70 acres located at the southwest corner of I-10 and Litchfield Road. It's just northeast of the CTCA, which was recently acquired by City of Hope. Just north of Celebrate Life Way. Down here's the Goodyear Village Center, which has Angry Crab, the Dollar Store, Burger King, some other retail uses. Just as a heads up, the Urban District 10 PAD, which is on tonight's agenda, is just west of the property, closer to Bullard Avenue. But my rezone before you is this red area. The subject property is zoned, actually 2 layers of PAD, planned area development. To the north, I-10, and then just north of that, that property is currently zoned for agriculture. To the east is the Palm Valley Crossing PAD, and on that last slide, it had the Amazon building, Yates, the Autoplex area is located within that PAD. Just south is the C2 district, like I mentioned, with those retail pads. And to the west, the CTCA site, the Urban District 10 site, and the property to the north is also zoned planned area development. In the general plan, the subject property is within the Business and Commerce District. So there, like I said, there's actually 2 bits of planned area development that apply to this property today. So the west half, this approximate 27 acres, is part of the Airport Gateway at Goodyear PAD. It's designated as Business Park. There are restricted uses within that PAD that are similar to the commercial office and the C1 zoning districts, and that applies the C2 development standards to the property. The east half of the property, it doesn't have a pretty map, so I just pulled our zoning map. It's called the Goodyear Palms Plaza PAD, and it designated the site as C2 General Commercial and applied all of those development standards to the property. So today's request is to rezone the property to a mix of uses with a PAD overlay. That includes approximately 14 acres of MF24, 17 acres of MF12, 15 acres of commercial office, 11 acres of C2 general commercial, and then 10 acres of commercial office / MF24 hybrid, with some restrictions, which I'll get into further in my presentation. The PAD also includes modified development standards and does create some design guidelines applicable to the property. So this is that distribution of land uses. The general commercial is up against Litchfield Road. MF12 just sits between the Cancer Treatment Center site and that commercial. MF24 is on the north side of this MF12, and then that hybrid district, kind of centrally located, and then commercial office to the west side of the property. So the MF12 standards, the request is to change that range of density. Right now there's a maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre in the MF12 district. The request is to change it from 10 to 15 dwelling units per acre, with the note that overall within all of the multifamily property, there's a minimum of 18 dwelling units per acre overall. So the Business and Commerce District of the general plan does have some requirements for a density of 18 units within the Business and Commerce District. So we are looking at this property holistically, where this piece is 10 to 15, overall in the site will be 18 to meet that Business and Commerce District requirement. The MF12 standards included in the PAD also allow units to be subdivided. That way, if the property owner wanted to subdivide those lots and sell them as townhomes, they can go that route as well. Increasing the maximum height to 30 feet and additionally requiring a minimum of 2 stories per unit. So this way, the typical Christopher Todd developments that we've seen in the last couple years. Those are single-story units. This one is requiring that all of these units are two-story to kind of give more of an urban feel to those units. And there's also a request to increase the lot coverage and reduce some setbacks. So like I said, the justification here is to provide for a higher intensity of the typical MF12 development. Like I said, those two-story buildings, providing opportunities for individual ownership, and then enhanced architectural design guidelines. The applicant has also offered a 1.5 acre public park to be privately maintained by that MF12 developer. So it wouldn't come out of any city maintenance programs, but that would be available to the public, including a trail system that would provide connections to that park. So this was a good trade-off for those modifications. In the MF24 district, the request is to increase the density from 24 dwelling units per acre to 30 dwelling units per acre, and increase that maximum building height from 40 feet to 56 feet. And once again, just kind of reiterating that in total, the density of the Goodyear Celebration Plaza site will be a minimum of 18 dwelling units per acre. The hybrid district is the mix of MF24 and commercial office. Those restrictions, the city actually reached out to the property owner and with the intent to kind of preserve this commercial office area for the medical office type uses. And what the property owner agreed to was that if approved 18 months following the approval, the site can only develop as commercial office. So if the city is working with, or if economic development is working with a medical office user, and we can get that site developed, it can go as medical office. After that 18 months is over and the site hasn't developed, the developer can proceed with an MF20 or a typical apartment development on that 10 acres. And then the development standards included in the Celebration Plaza PAD would apply based on the district that is developed. The commercial office development standards were requested to increase the height from 30 feet, which is what's in the zoning ordinance today, increase that to 56 feet. That's 56 feet is consistent with what the general commercial district standards are today. Additionally, the Cancer Treatment Center's building, I think, has a maximum of 85 feet, but it is just about 65 feet, I think, is approximately the height of that building. So it's a little bit more consistent and cohesive with what's out there today. The C2 district does not request any changes to the development standards. However, there are restricted uses. So what's in the zoning ordinance today, we've kind of pinned those back a little bit to make it more of just a better retail development based on our preferred uses. There is also a restriction that a maximum of one drive-through restaurant and a maximum of one gas station can be applied for as a use permit in the development. It cannot all be developed with drive-throughs or 2 gas stations, 3 gas stations. The applicant has agreed to commit to the maximum 1 of each type. I alluded to this when I talked about the park, but there is a stipulation and PAD development standards that require the public trail to connect the retail, medical office, and residential developments. The blue are planned on the public trails. Red would be if these are gated, you'd have private trails within there. But they all ultimately connect to the private park, the private amenities that are on the CTCA site, and then you can see some additional open spaces provided throughout. Now, just the disclaimer, this is a conceptual site plan, so there might not be a building exactly here or exactly in this order, but just showing the intent to provide those trails. Listed on these next two slides are the rezone evaluation criteria, which were included in your staff report. We found it consistent with the general plan with those stipulations. The site's physical and natural features are suitable for the proposal. It's compatible with the potential uses and surrounding uses, consistency with other land uses within the immediate area. I won't read them all. I just try to italicize some of the few things, but if you read the staff report, you saw my evaluation in there. From the public participation, we did hold a meeting on October 18th of last year. There were actually 4 attendees. There were 3 of them worked at the hotel, the Marriott, just south of the subject site. They got the postcard and were interested to see what was going on. And then 1 resident was actually in a meeting across the breezeway and just stopped in to see what was going on. So, but no objections have been received. We did the proper notices for public hearings, and to date, no objections. The proposal complies, like I mentioned, with all the evaluation criteria included in the zoning ordinance. Staff does recommend approval subject to stipulations included in that draft ordinance. The applicant is here and can provide a presentation or answer any questions, and I'm available to answer any questions as well. That concludes. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Would there be any questions for staff? Not right now? Maybe if we come up with something with,
I'll ask a question.
okay?
Alex, the site plan, I'm assuming it's tentative because it's reflected as if it were all the multifamily, the 24 density. Is that done with the maximum density consideration with the 56-foot building height?
Commissioner Zambito, I would have to ask the applicant on what their plans were shown on this. We did work out the deal of the portion of the hybrid later in the review. So I'm not sure how that would look with either district.
Well, in reading the report, it was my understanding if they chose to do the maximum density with the 56-foot high buildings, that would also result in a 56-foot setback from the parkway. And I was just curious if that was the way that was drawn. My understanding was it's 30 feet to start with, and if they go any dimension over the 30, it's a foot per, so that's 26 additional feet. I was curious to know if that was considered in what was presented to us here.
Excuse me, Jeff Lally, 701 North 44th Street here on behalf of the applicant. I don't think we've gotten to that level of detail for the site planning. If we do go to the 56 feet, we would have to meet whatever the setbacks are in the zoning code.
And I appreciate that. I guess my mind just kind of went, if we go another story, in fact, do we have enough parking at that point, and have we represented setting it back 56 feet and adding additional parking, and are we going to be coming back a year or 2 from now and saying, we need a parking structure? I mean, that's kind of where, I mean, if you're going to do this, you need to draw it to the maximum and know that you've accounted for the setbacks and know that you've accounted for all the units, so that we don't get stuck 2 years from now looking at, gee, we're kind of stuck, we don't have enough units, we don't have enough parking, we'd really like to have a parking structure, and we're hammered into a corner to make a decision.
Well, we have, like I said, we haven't really site planned it out yet. Certainly when we get to that point, we'll be cognizant of all the zoning requirements and making sure we meet setbacks and parking requirements. We're not asking for any deviations from anything. And in fact, the 56 feet was more, I think staff was more concerned and wanted more density in this particular area. So that would be, I think, going to 4 stories. I think the way we've got it laid out is basically at 3 stories. But
Okay.
if we went to 4 stories and we had some additional height, we would have to accommodate the additional setbacks, and then the parking would all be, I mean, whatever site plan we get to when we get to that point, it'll meet all the zoning requirements.
Okay. I just, as I was looking at it and I'm thinking about the other developments throughout town, I'm thinking, yeah, 3 stories is more or less what we've gone, and going higher than that kind of made me think, has the setback been taken into consideration? And even looking at the sample units that you provided, there were really none shown that appeared to be 4 stories. So I appreciate the fact that we're probably not going to go there, but
Yeah, I mean, our initial intent is only to go 3 stories, but,
Okay.
you know, we want to leave that option open again. If we go to that 4 stories, of course, we'll have to take everything into consideration when doing the site planning.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Alex, just to kind of piggyback on the statement, if they needed to put a parking garage in there, does this current zoning allow for such a item to be added, or do we have to go through the process again?
As long as it meets the typical multifamily, we would consider a parking garage to serve only the site as a typical accessory use.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Since you are already up, do you have any presentation you'd like to give, or?
I've got a few comments, if I may. I just wanted to point out that, you know, we are coming with this property. We spent the better part of a couple of years working with staff on this land plan. And as Alex pointed out, it's been zoned CO and commercial for about 15 years, and there hasn't really been a lot of activity on the property. And the Cancer Treatment Center didn't really spur that type of medical office that I think maybe people thought was going to happen at the time, which is why it's kind of been sitting fallow. And in fact, the commercial centers that are proximate to this site have kind of, there were 2 grocery store anchored centers at the corners of Litchfield and Van Buren that are no longer that. I think it's a church and a Goodwill. So it's kind of a depressed area. We think that adding some residential will really kind of invigorate things. We think we've right-sized the commercial with the, you know, I think it's 11 net, 14 gross, something along the Litchfield corridor. We've worked with staff to limit it so it's not all fast food restaurants. I know I've talked with the mayor, I'd like to see some sit-down restaurants, and we think there's the opportunity for that, some hotels. We also think that the office that we're providing does accommodate the kind of growth that we think that this area supports. In fact, we did have Elliott Pollock do an analysis, and they came up with that the long-term would show about 50,000 square feet of office is really what can be supported south of I-10, because we're competing with everything that's happening north of I-10 is one of the problems.
Yeah.
And the site, the 15-acre site, frankly, the way we've laid it out is over 200,000 square feet, just the 15-acre site. And then kind of late in the game, we came up with this hybrid parcel that we, again, staff said, hey, we've got some opportunities maybe to look at medical office on a little larger scale. So we said, that's fine. We'll kind of flex that piece in, sit on it for another 18 months, and let staff see if they can find somebody to utilize it. So we think we've got a good land plan that's moving forward. And I think, as just to piggyback on, you know, I know it says private park there, but it's a public park. Mm-hmm. So it'll be a public park open to the public. It'll be privately maintained. It's going to be outside the gates. It's not going to be inside any gates, so you'll be able to get to it. Same with the blue trails that you see there. So there'll be a trail. If there's a multifamily piece up there on the north side, the trail will be outside the gates again, so you'll be able to walk and really circumvent the whole project. It's about 1.5 miles around the site. So we think that's quite an amenity that not only for the residents here, but also for the Cancer Treatment Center and any other people. And Mark's done a good job of really horizontally integrating all the projects. So we think it's a good plan. We do have a presentation that we've done some more design and theming work if you'd like to see it. Or you can wait to see that when we come back with site plans. Or other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any other questions?
The building exhibits that were included for the commercial components, are those actually the feeling that you want to bring to the site?
Yes,
I love it.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
yes.
I agree. I thought the architecture, used the word invigorate. I think that area definitely needs a fresh start. And Litchfield Road, we're very proud of Litchfield Road, and it needs definitely some newer architecture and some architecture that really stands out to kind of mirror what we have going on in this area here. And I think this is a huge opportunity for that. And I love the interconnectedness of the project. I think that's another fantastic. And that the road, just the commercial, the architectural designs along Litchfield, I hope that's what we bring, because from the pictures, they were impressive.
Very nice.
So, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Okay. Are there any speaker cards? Okay. Would anybody else like to speak in the audience on this matter? All right. I will close the public hearing. And I will need a motion and a second for item number 222000014, Goodyear Celebration Plaza rezone. I have a motion by Commissioner Hegedus and a second from Commissioner Zambito. Please put in your vote.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Agenda number 3 is the Urban District 10, just behind this project. I will open the public hearing. Planning Manager Steve Correcchia will present. Happy New Year, Steve.
Happy New Year, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. Thank you for letting me come before you tonight. I am filling in for Karen Craver, who could not be here tonight, so I will do my best to address this project. So where we're located, Alex's project was just here to the east, so we're now on the west side of the hospital, right about here, about 40, almost 44 acres. And as you can see surrounding it, pretty much most of the development in this area is the hospital. Ag is the predominant use for most of this area in this zoning district. And in just a little bit of history of the zoning, Alex talked a little about it. This was that Celebration Plaza parcel that was right here just north of the hospital. We're right here. So this is all Airport Gateway, a PAD from 2007. A lot of regional commercial business park uses in this kind of southern half here. So about 212 acres overall for Airport Gateway. You had the 25 acres for the hospital, the remaining 187, all undeveloped. So tonight's here is for this piece right here, about 44 acres that the applicant would like to rezone to PAD. And so that Airport Gateway, the request is to zone it to a project to be called Urban District 10. And that will be a mix of business and commerce park uses. The uses are established in the PAD. They'll be subject to the commercial district development standards. Also, you notice that there's an light industrial component to this project. So that's why you see this here, that all of those uses will be subject to our standard industrial screening standards. I also want to note the landscaping along Bullard. They have a window along Bullard Avenue. The applicant agreed to do the larger landscape buffer and the enhanced design that you see for all of Bullard south of Van Buren. And just like Alex said with her presentation, this is a conceptual site plan. This was just an idea that the applicant would be interested in proposing, but again, this is just conceptual. So we have right here 5 buildings. You have interior truck courts for these buildings here, and you also have these wing walls here to help screen any interior truck courts. Here is that enhanced 50-foot landscape buffer that will be provided along Bullard Avenue, along with standard landscaping along Celebrate Life Way. This is a private drive here, so not a public street. This would mainly serve the users in this area and connect to the cul-de-sac here. And as we can see from this conceptual site plan, most of the improvements for the public streets, Bullard, Celebrate Lifeway, I think 143rd here, they're generally in. However, we do have stipulations of approval that should a traffic study or at site plan, we determine that additional improvements are needed, the applicant would need to put those in. But pretty much right now, we've got curbing, landscaping, street lights for all of these streets. Also, another feature wanted to note, they do have a central amenity area, about 2.5 acres that they would like to put into this project and was stipulated. So with this project, concept here is shown, but the design, these type of amenities, the planters benches, those all have been stipulated. So some form of this park will be provided with this development as it moves forward. And a conceptual rendering, the PAD does set forth materials, colors, a general design. So this is kind of the configuration, the materials, colors, the look that the applicant is looking for in this development. A lot of glass, some vertical elements with the metal, some overhanging shade elements. And in looking at our public participation, we did follow all of our requirements for citizen review, for this public hearing and for the council. And those included mailings to surrounding property owners, legal advertisements, and posting of the property. Staff did receive one public inquiry, but it was for information only. No opposition has been received on this project to date. And just like the prior case, there are several evaluation criteria that staff looks at for rezoning. And looking at those, we do find it promotes the general plan. It's consistent with the policies therein, our design guidelines and engineering standards. As such, we are recommending the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of this item to the City Council, subject to the stipulations in the draft ordinance. And if this item does move on from tonight, the next meeting would be the 23rd of January at 5 p.m. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my portion of the presentation. Available for questions. The applicant is also here if you or the commission have any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve? I had one. In regards to the building and development of this, can you put up just the map of the whole area? What is the possibility that these developments will be happening at similar times? I know it's coming forward here, but are they going to be developed at around the same time? Possibly?
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, that is a hard question. They are both at the same stage of entitlement.
Right.
The applicant is indicating a willingness to move forward here, whether they get ahead of these folks, that could happen. The thing that we are aware of, at least, is that at least the infrastructure is in. This development can proceed without this one, vice versa. We do have adequate public access along this here. They would be required to put in a private drive. So we have several points of ingress, egress for this property. Water, sewer, again, all facilities are located in these public rights-of-way.
And another reason why I'm asking is I didn't know if it was possible to work architecturally along so that that corridor has some kind of uniformity in regards to architecture, so you don't have, and I know this is getting into the nitty-gritty, and I don't even know if you have much in terms of design or philosophy in this, but it would make sense that this whole street would look or have a uniform look. I'm just thinking out loud, but I don't know if staff has or will consider that in the future, the look of uniformity of the entire road.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that is a great statement. We appreciate that as well, you saying that. We do try to, as part of our criteria and our design guidelines, we do try to look at design complementing others, not mimicking, but complementing.
Sure.
So that is a point well taken. We do look to our applicants and say, this is existing development around you, let's complement this, maybe drag a color, a material over, just to have it look consistent, but different, unique and different, but consistent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, the Bullard corridor looks beautiful. We drive by that all the time, and my wife is always saying, I'm so glad they did what they did to these buildings because they look so different than the typical warehouse or the typical thing you see in other cities I won't name. But you definitely feel like you are in a higher end area just with the landscaping. It's fantastic. So thank you for your hard work in the Bullard corridor especially. It's really nice to see. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say that, Jason, along those lines, I do think the detailing that they provided with that exhibit, it does have the metal in it. It does have a little bit of that, and it would both blend with what we just saw
It would.
on the commercial end, yet it doesn't look commercial as well as, say, the data center just down the street on Bullard.
True.
I mean, it looks really nice. There's a lot of detail, a lot of material differential. I appreciate it.
Would the applicant like to address the commission?
Good evening. For the record, Shane Alleman with Tiffany and Bosco, 2525 East Camelback Road, and we are so grateful to be here tonight. It's been a long process working with staff and the many departments to get to where we're at tonight. But I did want to express my gratitude to all of the departments. It takes a team to get to where we're at, between the traffic, engineering, planning, economic development. And we've been able to work with all of the staff, and they've been fantastic. And we can say that the project that we started with and where we're at now is better, and that's absolutely a product of working hand in hand with staff. We're excited about the architecture that we're proposing. We've been working close with staff, and even as we get into the site plan level, we know that more details will be added to that, and we'll be able to work with staff in regards to the colors and the materials and all of those things to make sure that there is some uniformity, but some uniqueness as well here. We're really excited about the Oasis Park, which you probably notice is a very distinct and unique feature to a type of project like this. So we're excited to have that. And as we get into the site plan process, there will be more details that we'll be able to add to that and more specificity to that. But we're really excited to have that component. That'll be a really important gathering point for the employees and those that are visiting, create that sense of place that typically you want in these kind of commerce, business, office park, industrial areas. I do have Urban Logistics here tonight with me, the executive team, and so we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. The other thing I'll note too is with our neighbor, CTCA, just to the east of us, we reached out to them early on, have had several discussions with them, and we're very pleased that they provided a support letter to the mayor as they reviewed our project, looked at the uses, looked at the architecture, and we're really excited to cultivate users that can come to the site that can synergize with CTCA, and we're really excited to have their support as we continue to work with them in this area. So thank you for your considerations tonight, and we're grateful for staff giving recommendation of approval. We know we got a lot of stipulations, but that's important to the project moving forward, and we agree with all of them. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Thank you so much. Speaker cards? All right. Would anybody in the audience like to speak? All right. And with that, I'll close the public hearing. And I will need a motion in a second to approve the rezoning for Urban District 10. I have a motion from Commissioner Wang and a second from Commissioner Booth. Please put in your votes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Steve. All right, agenda item number 4 is the rezone for Accent at Canyon Trails. I will now open the public hearing. Principal Planner Christian Williams will present.
All right, good evening, Commissioner Kish and the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Christian Williams, Principal Planner here with Goodyear. I have you for the next 4 items, so hopefully I don't overly bore you. Here to conduct a rezoning on a property within the city. So the property is approximately 8.6 acres, and it's located in central Goodyear within the Canyon Trails development. It's on the southeast corner of 158th Avenue and Roosevelt Street. That is northwest of Estrella and Van Buren. And a couple local landmarks would be a Saddle Mountain Brewery right there, and then there's a Walmart kind of nearby. So it's right here in this little red area right there. The underlying zoning of that property is it's PAD with an underlying land use currently of commercial. So again, that property is just south of Canyon Trails Phase 1 residential, just north of Travis Park at Canyon Trails, just west of Parkway Village, and just east of a borrow pit that's being filled right now by Fucero. For a little bit of zoning history on Canyon Trails, in 1999, that's that middle map right there, the property was zoned for townhouses actually. 10 acres of townhouses. That was the underlying land use. In 2005, the area commercial grew rapidly. That's when the 91 acres that is now Canyon Trails Town Center was zoned for that use. That also, and then that was also rezoned to also include multifamily to make that a mixed-use center. So now Canyon Trails Town Center has about 71 acres of commercial. In 2011, this property was zoned from townhouses to commercial. So if you're curious about how much commercial still exists within Canyon Trails, the development started out with approximately 146 acres of commercial. After that Canyon Trails Town Center expansion, as well as this property going commercial, the development of Canyon Trails ended up with 247 acres commercial. So if this site is rezoned today back to townhomes, there'll still be a surplus of 20 acres of commercial within Canyon Trails. So this is where we started. Here's where we've headed with some of those residential zonings. Our property today in question's here. And again, with all these changes, there's still a surplus of 20 acres of commercial, some of which is now being developed today over in the Canyon Trails Town Center. All right, so the applicant is requesting, again, a zoning change from PAD with an underlying land use of commercial to the R1A, single-family attached residential zoning district with a PAD overlay to facilitate some of the development standards that they're requesting. Of note, the R1A zoning district doesn't typically contemplate a alley-loaded product. They're proposing an alley-loaded product, so those front doors would face on the green spaces or roads, and those car alleys, garages would be tucked behind. The renderings that you see here are an example of a product that they'd like to propose. You've got the front of the unit with porches. You got a wraparound side porch on the street-facing sides. It's an example down here, and then the alley-loaded garages. So you'd have various buildings of different unit types and different amounts of units, but they're all attached. So those are example images. Once we get to the site plan process or the design review process, which will follow pre-plat, we get into the details of that. So I'll highlight a couple of the items requested in this PAD overlay regulation. So starting with the design guidelines, again, a typical R1A is for a garage forward home. This development is proposing an alley-loaded product, so the lots would be narrower, but you'd have the garages towards the rear. So these lots would be about 20 feet wide, 75 foot deep, but they'd have a minimum patio or private open space square footage of 66 square feet. And then again, if you have two patios facing one another, they've committed to a minimum of a 10-foot wide greenway or green space in between those. That would be the minimum separation there. The development also, because they are going to have a narrower lot that wouldn't have a traditional backyard, they're proposing a clubhouse and fitness center as well as a pool for the use of the residences, as well as a separate tot lot area. The example in the middle kind of shows you some of those that if they were to go to plat today, that's an example of what that might look like. The development will also have small blocks with buildings that face the streets. Where those buildings face the side of the street, they would have that wraparound porch as an opportunity to add some streetscape enhancements. They are adjacent to the commercial center. So one thing that the applicant is committed to working out is looking at if they can make a meaningful connection to that commercial center so that residents don't have to actually leave the neighborhood. They can, stumble on through the wall into Saddle Mountain or whatnot. Or the frozen yogurt place or all those awesome little places in there. The units also, again, since they're not going to have traditional driveways, they've also committed to some enhancements for parking. So they've committed to 2.5 spaces of parking with a minimum of 0.5 of those spaces being for guests. So that will end up ultimately leaving you with some on-street or tracked guest parking so that there's a pool of guest parking when those residents have guests. They've also committed to an enhanced parking management plan that would either happen through an HOA or a property management association. There are also additional provisions for design enhancements, building design guidelines, continuity with the existing Canyon Trails development, and also respecting that single-family residential to the south. They've committed to a minimum of a 10-foot wide landscape tract on the south side of the property. They won't have carports or things of that nature in that setback. If they do propose a two-story product adjacent to that single family, that two-story element would need to be at least 15 feet away from the single-family residential. And if they did do alleys with canopies or things like that, that would need to be 30 feet away from single-family residential. So if you think about the single-family residential to the south, some of those have 15-foot deep yards. If you're talking a two-story townhouse, 15-foot wide setback. So respecting that existing community. To date, the city has received no formal resident opposition, and staff has evaluated the impacts of this proposed zoning with the greater community. With no major concerns being found, staff is recommending that you forward an approval recommendation for the rezoning of this property to the Planned Area Development Zoning District with an underlying land use of R1A single-family attached zoning with that PAD overlay entitled Ascent at Canyon Trails, as set forth in the zoning ordinance. The applicant is here. They don't have a formal presentation if it's not needed, and I'm happy to take any zoning questions you might have.
Thank you, Christian. Are there any questions for staff? I know exactly where this product is going. I used to live right there in that Canyon Trails development on Diamond Street, which is that first road right there. I'm really glad that something is going into this location because it's been dead for a long time. All right, so would the applicant like to address?
Only if necessary.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay. Are there any speaker cards? Okay. No one in the audience probably wants to speak? Okay. And I will, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. And may I have a motion and a second on the rezone of Canyon Trails for Accent at Canyon Trails? I have a motion from Vice Chairman Clymer and a second from Commissioner Hegedus. Please input your votes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5 is a rezone for Fulton Homes at Ballpark Village. I will open the public hearing. Christian, it's your show.
Me again. All right. So here to conduct a rezoning on a property in the city, 156 acres. This property we are discussing today is at the southeast corner of Estrella Parkway and Yuma Road in central Goodyear within the area we call Ballpark Village. The current property is zoned PAD. It's entitled for a residential master plan community, and that property is right here. It's the upside down twisted L shape right here. So zooming in a little closer, you can see that the property is west of the city-owned Bullard Wash, and a property zoned Anton at Ballpark Village. They have an approved site plan, so hopefully moving forward shortly. It is east of the Velux at Ballpark Village development. It is south of the Ballpark Village North development, mixed use, residential, commercial, and it's north of our city-owned properties. Again, this is the greater Ballpark Village area. This property occupies this 56 acre chunk of the property. So the purpose of this rezone is actually a PAD amendment. The applicant would like to request a setback amendment to one of the 4 lots that are located within this PAD. That is the lot in this PAD called the R45. Their request is that for 2-story homes, they retain the 20-foot rear yard setback, and for 1-story homes, they would have a 10-foot backyard setback. So the R45s would have 10 feet backyards for 1-story, 20-foot backyards for 2-story. The reason they're requesting that is there's been some changes in the market. They're anxious to develop this property, and they're looking at getting creative with some housing product in there and introducing some additional 1-story homes. As a means to modify that, since those homes will have smaller yards, they have requested that they'd like to codify a minimum square footage for the aquatic center that will be in the middle of that community. They'd like to codify that with a 7,000 square foot pool and a 10,000 square foot pool deck for those residents. If you were to calculate occupancy for that, that's about 810 people. There's proposed to be 795 homes. They're not all going to be there at once. So looks to be justified in staff's perspective. They also would like to add some additional amenities for the surrounding community that are public. They are proposing, let me just go to the next slide. So the pool deck's on the left. They're proposing to include shaded seating areas along the city-owned Bullard Wash Trail that they are already going to construct, and some really enhanced trail markers to denote that you're entering that section of the trail within Ballpark Village. They've incorporated the city's branding efforts for Ballpark Village, and they'd like to build that and offer that to the city as a public amenity for not only their residents, but the city as a whole. To date, the city has not received any resident opposition or calls for general inquiries on this case. Staff has evaluated the impacts of this proposed zoning to the greater community, and with no major concerns being found, staff recommends you forward an approval recommendation to rezone the property from planned area development to first amended planned area development for Fulton Homes at Ballpark Village, first amended PAD, subject to staff stipulations. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Christian. Are there any questions for staff?
I do have one question.
Commissioner Zambito?
When we approved this last time, how big was the pool?
The pool size was unspecified, so it's not typical that we codify minimum size for the pool, but to provide the city with some certainty that that would be a really nice enhanced amenity, they ran some studies on what size capacity would, effectively meet those homes there, so they're codifying a minimum size.
Okay.
That's a good question. Will this increase the density of the area, or
No.
just make smaller backyards?
Smaller backyards.
Okay. Questions?
I don't have any problem with the idea. I really like the difference in the product. I think a lot of people prefer a one-story, so
Yeah.
I think it'll help them sell them too. And I think the development's really nice, and I really appreciate the fact that I know when we were meeting last year that we discussed engaging with the trail or opening out onto the trail, and I'm glad they've embraced that. And thank you for your effort in bringing that in.
I do remember that now that you mentioned that. Are there, would the applicant like to speak?
Very briefly, Chair, members of the commission, Chris Webb with Rose Law Group here tonight on behalf of the Fulton Homes team. Just wanted to express our appreciation to Christian in particular for working through this PAD amendment with us. This is, a pretty small change. This will allow Fulton Homes to offer a single-story option for that particular lot size. Previously, it was an all two-story product line. This is a product line that they're selling in another project, and there has been a lot of inquiry about a single-story option, and so this allows us to do that. As far as the reduction on the rear setback, it really only affects a pretty small portion of the overall lots. This lot size makes up about 30% of the overall community, and Fulton Homes anticipates that somewhere between 40 and 50% of their buyers are going to choose that single-story option on this lot size. So at the end of the day, this setback reduction probably affects 15% of the overall lots in the community. So we think it's a good change, serves to make some further improvements to the project, and appreciate your consideration. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. You got off easy tonight. Speaker cards and audience is dwindling, so with that, I will close the public hearing. I need a motion and a second for the rezone at Ballpark Village. I have a motion from Commissioner Zambito and a second from Commissioner Wang. Please enter your votes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right. All right. Fulton Homes is back with item number 6, a pre-plat for Fulton Homes at Ballpark Village. Christian is back. Let's do this.
All right. You know what we're talking about? The gross acreage is 164.92 acres. That includes center lines of roads, things of that nature.
Oh, do I need to open the public hearing?
It's not a public hearing.
Oh,
it's
that's
a
right.
pre-plat.
It's
Yep.
just business.
Yep.
My bad. Thank you.
You got it. All right. So effectively, if council approves this, this will be zoned PAD, amended PAD. You know what we're talking about, so I'll keep it a little shorter. All right, so based on the zoning cases that you've seen in April and today, the map on the left is what they're effectively proposing. And today, what you're being asked to recommend approval of is a pre-plat. These two documents here come from the pre-plat. You got your landscape plans, you got your plat. Platting is effectively just turning all this zoning into lots. So very similar to what you've seen. This pre-plat does include all the goodies that they've committed to adding with that zoning. So assuming council were to approve the zoning, it's likely they'd want to see this pre-plat move forward with all those additional trail enhancements. In summary, staff has evaluated the pre-plat against the zoning, the proposed rezoning, design guidelines, zoning ordinances, and other engineering and development factors with no major concerns being found. Staff recommends you forward an approval recommendation of pre-plat Fulton Homes at Ballpark Village, which will contain 796 lots and 87 tracks, subject to the stipulations found in the staff report. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Okay. Applicant, we can move on from that. Speaker cards. And I will need a motion and a second to approve the pre-plat for Fulton Homes. Motion from Commissioner Zambito, a second from Commissioner Hegedus. Please enter your vote.
Motion passes.
Rolling right along to item number 7, the pre-plat for La Jolla Vista.
All right.
Thank you.
Last but certainly not least, and I'm the one thing standing between y'all and dinner, so I'll move this along. Here with a request from the applicant Leslie Chatburn for a preliminary plat within the city. This preliminary plat and the overall property that we're discussing today is at the northeast corner of Citrus Road and Lower Buckeye Road within Central Goodyear in the area we call West Goodyear. Property is zoned R14 and R16, located right here. Zooming in a little closer, that is south of County Residential, south and west of Cotton Flower and C. Lomas, north of Anawa Freya Unified School District High School site and the Artesian at West Goodyear, and it is east of Pradera. Again, this property is zoned R14 and R16. From the zoning hearings that you recently had, I don't even think that was maybe 2-3 months ago, you saw the zoning area on the left with some conceptual lotting layouts. These both were from that case. Today we're here to make those get one step more closer to formal, so you've got these lots right here. In summary, the applicant is requesting to plat and create 736 lots and 59 tracks, subject to the stipulations found in the staff report, and staff has evaluated those impacts against the PAD overlay, the zoning districts, the design guidelines, the zoning ordinance, and engineering standards, and we have no major concerns that have been found, so we recommend you forward an approval recommendation to council. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Christian. Questions? Is that high school anywhere close to getting put in, or do they have any plans for it?
Not currently, but the last time we contacted the school district, they indicated that they're still interested in them holding that site for potential growth.
Okay, thank you. Applicant, would the applicant like to speak? No. All right. I'm going to assume there's no speaker cards. All right. And no one in the audience like to speak? Okay. I will take a motion and a second. I have a motion from Vice Chairman Clymer and a second from Commissioner Booth. Please put in your votes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
There was a marathon there at the end.
Thank you.
See? Told the shirt is a winner, Chris. Are there any staff communications this evening?
Christian has an invitation that he wants to extend on behalf of the city.
So I'm not sure if you all are aware, but the city has recently purchased property surrounding the Goodyear Ballpark, some additional property that was privately held just south of the Fulton Homes project. We've recently purchased that land, and we are inviting the public to attend a Ballpark Village Town Hall. The city is interested to share some ideas for those properties and also to receive feedback from the public. We're looking at information or seeking feedback on the spaces that will include restaurants, retail, residential, and community spaces. That town hall meeting for Ballpark Village will be held on January 24th at 6 p.m. at the Goodyear Recreation Campus over off of Harrison and Estrella Parkway.
Awesome. Thank you for the heads up. Will we get an email just to RSVP to that, or?
I can send something out for you, just as a reminder to you.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll do that.
All right. Any other communications? All right. With all that being said, the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting will be held on February 15th, 2023 at 6 p.m. The Goodyear City Hall Council Chambers. Hopefully the construction will be done. There being no further business to discuss, this meeting is adjourned.